Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
One day a wife called her husband from a business trip and confessed that she. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. A few days ago, our friends came to visit us. We've known Bob and Maria for most of our married lives. Maria worked with my wife, Trina, at a large, well-known travel agency with offices in several states. Bob is the boss at the factory where I work as an electrician. I've been working there since I returned from the army about 8 years ago. The four of us were watching an old movie called Same Time, Next Year, which was about a man and a woman who were lovers for many years. They were both married, but not to each other. They agreed to meet and be together every year at the same time for a week, while living normal lives with their spouses and families for the rest of the year. Our wives cried at the end of one of their meetings when the couple had to separate and return to their families. "What nonsense," I said. "They're both cheating on their families, and you think it's so sad? They should be caught and face the consequences." "Andy, how can you say that?" Maria objected. "They were true lovers and only met once a year." I replied, "So you two think it's okay for me to meet my old girlfriend once a year as long as Trina doesn't find out?" Trina got angry. "You an idiot. This is not about you and your old friend Melissa, it's about people who are truly in love. I doubt you'll ever understand that." Bob realized things were heating up and said, "Let's just forget about it. It's just a movie. We shouldn't argue over it." I asked, "Bob, if that woman were your wife, would you say it's okay for her to cheat once a year?" "If I found Trina doing this, I'd kick her out," Bob replied. "And Trina, you had no right to mention Melissa just because she was my girlfriend before I met you." "Damn, I didn't say anything about you and your old flames," I retorted. Zach said, "Listen, this is getting out of control. Let's stop talking about the film." Maria said, "No, I want to know Bob's answer. What would you do if Maria wanted to do the same thing as the woman in the movie?" "Listen, Andy," Bob said, "Maria won't do something like that. I won't answer based on a silly assumption. Maria is too good a person to ever do this to our marriage." I happened to look at the women, and for a moment, something flashed between them. I couldn't say what it was at the time, but it made me feel uneasy. Maria stood up, sat on her husband's lap, and kissed him, which seemed to calm things down. As for Trina, she didn't smile at me. She stood up and offered everyone another drink. I turned off the movie, and all four of us went into the kitchen to play cards. We usually played men against women. I have to admit that this got me thinking a lot in the following days. When I finished school, I enlisted in the army and signed a contract for 3 years, with 2 years abroad. I went to our prom with my girlfriend Melissa, whom I truly believed I loved. She was my first love, and we thought we'd be together forever. I was too naive at the time. The last time we were together was a week before I was supposed to leave for work. She didn't come to say goodbye because she had another event to attend. Her parents said she could go with me if she also went to another dance with Eric, a college student. Melissa mentioned this to her mother, who worked with Eric's mother, and they tried to set them up. It hurt knowing Melissa would be with Eric, but she promised she wouldn't kiss him. 4 months into my deployment, I received a letter from my sister saying Melissa was pregnant. I couldn't believe it. Melissa had been writing to me since I left, but she never mentioned this. My sister knew, so Melissa must have known as well. I was furious. I wrote her a letter, expressing my anger and disappointment. I was fighting in a war, and my girlfriend was cheating on me and didn't even have the decency to tell me she was pregnant. I told her not to waste time writing to me because it was over between us. I told her I hoped she, her child, and Eric would be happy together. I received a letter from her, but I tore it up and threw it away. I never heard from her again. While I was abroad, my sister said Melissa and Eric got married shortly before the baby was born. They lived at Eric's parents' house, and Eric took night classes at college to finish his degree. After learning about the pregnancy, I felt like a hero. I wasn't brave. I was just driven by a sense of duty, throwing myself into my work with little regard for my own safety. I thought I'd return home in a coffin. I didn't care. I was a soldier who felt his life was over. It was a shock when my service ended and I found not only was I alive but also received several awards for bravery. When I returned home, the city held a celebration in my honor. I met many friends and old schoolmates, and everyone was friendly. I wondered if Melissa would show up, but when I spotted her in the crowd with a baby stroller and her husband, she turned around and left without speaking to me. I was surprised, given that I had written her a harsh letter. It's funny how emotions can take over when we're angry. Seeing her left me feeling sad, but I still resented what had happened. At the celebration, I danced with an old classmate, Trina. She was one of the most beautiful girls from our class and was dating a popular athlete at the time. I heard he moved to another state after high school and eventually married someone else. Trina attended a local college and earned a business degree before working for a large travel agency. I learned that Trina's former boyfriend had also moved on and married someone else. As Trina and I danced, we reminisced about old times and realized we had both been let down by past relationships. We began dating and eventually got married 6 months later. It might sound naive, but when people experience disappointment, they often react differently. I got a job at a local factory and began training to become an electrician. Trina and I got along well, we had a strong connection and shared many interests. We enjoyed each other's company, and our relationship grew into a fulfilling one. One day, while visiting Bob and Maria, Trina mentioned a conference that her travel agency was hosting. Every 2 years, our agency holds a conference in a different state, Trina explained. This time, it's in Florida. We can bring our spouses. Would you like to go? I don't want to spend my vacation week in May attending meetings, I said. Are any of your colleagues going? Maria said, I'm going. Bob can't take a vacation and isn't interested. Usually, Trina, Barb, and I, another colleague from the office, go together. Sounds good to me, I replied. This will give me a week to miss you before you return. Trina smiled slightly and went into the women's room with Maria. I never quite understood why women need to go to the restroom together. After they left, Bob and I talked about how fortunate we were not to have to attend such a dull conference. When Trina returned from the conference, we shared a deep connection that resulted in her becoming pregnant. I was thrilled to become a father. Our daughter, Renee, was born just in time for Valentine's Day, a perfect gift. We became a family, and life improved. Trina took 3 months off after giving birth, and my sister Jen offered to babysit, which was ideal. I cherished holding Renee and watching her play. However, our relationship was sometimes strained by arguments. Trina would occasionally bring up Melissa, and I'd mention Zach in response. It was foolish to argue about people who were no longer part of our lives, but past grievances often resurface in moments of anger. One day, I asked Jen if she had seen Melissa recently. Sometimes I see her at the grocery store, Jen said. She has the sweetest little girl named Andrea. I know you don't want to hear about her, but she loves her daughter, even though she doesn't seem entirely happy. Well, next time you see her, tell her I have a daughter too, I said. That's rude, Andy. I won't tell her that, Jen replied. A few minutes later, Trina arrived, and we had to change the subject. For some reason, I couldn't just forget Melissa, maybe because she was my first love, or because I still cared about her deep down. I wondered if others feel the same way about their first love. Do we ever truly forget them? Had Trina forgotten Zach? Time passed quickly, and it was soon time for Trina to attend her next conference. I really didn't want to go, and neither did Bob. Plus, I had a 2-year-old daughter to take care of, or at least that's how I explained it to Trina. She and Maria went with their friend. When Trina came back, our connection was strong again. I even thought about suggesting she attend more conferences, as every time she came back, our connection felt renewed. A couple of months later, Trina discovered she was pregnant. 7 months later, our second daughter, Ashley, was born. Valentine's Day was becoming quite special in our house. Life went on, and we lived an ordinary life, with our usual ups and downs. The longer we were married, the less we seemed to have in common. I often thought we might have divorced if it weren't for our 2 sweet daughters, Renee and Ashley. I finally received my master electrician certificate, which meant more work but also more money. I spent my free time with the girls, understanding that they would soon grow up, and I wanted to be there for them as much as possible. Trina and I got along, but it felt more like duty than love. Many of my friends seemed to have similar marriages, trying to maintain appearances but feeling like strangers behind closed doors. I tried to lighten things up with Trina, but it often ended in disagreements. When Trina was planning her next conference, I told her I would go with her, hoping it might strengthen our marriage by showing more interest in her work. At first, she seemed annoyed, but after a few days, she warmed to the idea. A few days later, Bob called and invited me to go fishing in Canada while the girls were at the conference. I tried to explain to him that I had promised Trina I would go with her. Believe me, Bob, I'd rather go fishing than attend a tourism conference. Just tell Trina, I'm sure she will understand. I've already booked the cabin. It was Maria who suggested I ask you. Please at least mention it to Trina. I was on the floor playing with the girls when Trina came home. The first thing she mentioned was the fishing trip. I know about the fishing trip, Andy. I think you should go. Really? I promised you I'd go to the conference with you, I said. This is your first vacation since becoming an electrician. You deserve it, and I don't want to take that away from you, she said with a smile. Call Bob and tell him to save you a spot. I was amazed by her understanding. I told her I would be home in time for our usual time together when she returned from her trip. I quickly called Bob and arranged the trip. That night, Trina and I spent some time together, and it seemed like things were improving. The fishing trip was just what I needed to unwind. My sister looked after the children while we were both away. I asked her to stay one more night so Trina and I could have some time together. Jen just laughed and said she would see me the next day. Trina and I had a passionate evening when she returned. It led to our third pregnancy, and our son, Andrew, was born the following February. All three of our children were born within days of each other in February. As soon as Andrew was born, I decided to have a vasectomy. I told Trina that 3 children were enough and that I wasn't going to use any more birth control. She didn't seem particularly happy or sad about it, perhaps she felt the same way. About a year after Andrew was born, Jen told me that Melissa wanted to talk to me alone. What could she want after all these years? I asked. I don't know, Jen replied. She filed for divorce from Eric, but I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it. She seems scared and needs to talk to you. I was concerned about how Trina would react if she found out I was talking to Melissa. I didn't want to stir up old issues, but I also didn't want to regret not hearing Melissa out. I'd be upset if Trina found out I was in contact with Melissa, I said. I don't even know where Zach lives. Listen, Andy, the last thing I want is to interfere in your marriage. Maybe you can call her from my house or even meet her here. We're just talking, no personal matters involved. I've always cared about her, and I know she wouldn't ask to see me if it wasn't really important, Jen suggested. The next day, I went to Jen's house to meet Melissa. I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to go home, but another part was eager to see her again. I sat in front of Jen's house for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts and figure out what to say. Nervous, I got out of the car and walked to the door. I rang the doorbell, feeling it was different this time. Jen answered the door and asked why I rang the bell. I was at a loss for words. When I walked in, the tension was palpable. Melissa was standing in the kitchen, looking just as I remembered her. She started crying and covered her face with her hands. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't expected this reaction. I approached her, took her hands, and tried to comfort her. I'm so sorry, Andy. I'm so sorry, she repeated through her tears. Her emotional state touched me deeply. 10 years ago, I would have been relieved to see her feeling remorseful, but now everything felt different. Perhaps time had healed some wounds. It's okay, Mel. It was a long time ago, and we've both moved on, I said gently. No, you don't understand. I promised Eric that I would never see you again, but I had to break that promise. I had to for Andrea, my little girl, Mel explained. You're right, Mel, I don't understand. What are you trying to say? I asked. Mel calmed down a bit as Jen brought her a cup of tea. The three of us sat at the table. Jen suggested we move to another room to give Mel and me some privacy. No, please stay, Jen. I think you need to hear this too, Mel said. Andrea, my daughter, has severe jaundice due to liver failure and needs a liver transplant. The doctor said that family members are the best donors, as they only need to give part of their liver, which will regenerate over time. The problem is, I don't qualify, and we don't have other family members who do. What about Eric? Jen asked. Has he been tested? What about his family members? Mel looked at me and said, Eric is not Andrea's father. You are, Andy. I was stunned and had many questions. Why didn't you tell me sooner? It was my baby, and I didn't know. I was so angry when I got your letter that I threw it away without reading it. I've regretted that ever since. I wrote you a letter with an explanation, but you never responded. I was so hurt by what you wrote that I didn't try again. I'm sorry, Mel said. Eric knew Andrea wasn't his child. We didn't have a physical relationship before marriage. I told him you were the father and that you wanted nothing to do with me. Eric took good care of me and agreed to marry me, but he insisted on being recognized as Andrea's father. I had to agree not to see you again and let everyone believe Eric was the father. Tears welled up in her eyes again. Eric and I got along until Andrea's diagnosis. Now, I had to choose between telling you the truth and keeping my family together. I chose to tell you because my child's life is at stake. Are you willing to get tested to see if you can be a donor? I saw the hope in her eyes. This was a significant decision, and I was uncertain about how Trina would react. Despite the potential consequences, I knew I had to make the right choice. Of course, I'll get tested to save Andrea's life. Please have the doctor schedule an appointment for me, I said, feeling the weight of the decision. Mel hugged me, whispering, I love you so much, always have and always will. She immediately called the hospital to schedule the test, and I had an appointment for Monday. I planned to break the news to Trina soon, knowing I was in a difficult position. I believed Mel when she said Andrea was my daughter. Once I got tested, I would know for sure. Mel had nothing to gain and much to lose by lying to me. I hugged Jen and Mel before heading home, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. Discovering that Andrea was my daughter was a lot to process. I had a child I had never met, the woman I had always cared about was back in my life, and I had a wife who disapproved of my past relationship. Plus, I had 3 children at home. It was a lot to take in. When Trina came home, I decided to wait a while before discussing the matter with her. I didn't want the kids to witness a heated argument, they'd seen enough of that. On Sunday, I took the children to my mother's house, telling Trina I needed to discuss something important. When I returned, Trina confronted me. What's so important that we can't talk in front of the kids? She asked. I tried to explain. I spoke with Melissa yesterday, and there are some serious matters we need to discuss. Trina interrupted, so you went to see her? What does she want from you? Help around the house? Trina, this is really serious. Mel's daughter is very ill and needs a liver transplant to survive. She's asked if I can help. What does that have to do with us? Trina replied, showing a mix of concern and frustration. Why did Mel need to tell you this? Mel explained that Andrea needs part of an adult liver to survive. Family members are the best match, and I'm being tested to see if I'm a suitable donor. Trina's expression shifted to anger. So you believe her? You're the father of the child? And you're going to help? Yes, she says I'm the father, and I'm going to find out for sure. If Andrea is my daughter, I want to help her, I said firmly. I have an appointment for the test tomorrow. What about our family? Have you considered us? What if something goes wrong, or you need time to recover? Trina's concern was evident, but her frustration was palpable. I know this is difficult, but knowing that I could save a child's life, and that she might be my daughter, I feel I have to do this, I said. Trina's anger intensified. So you're putting your ex-girlfriend and her daughter before your own family? You're a poor excuse for a man and a father. If our children needed a transplant, I would be there for them. But I don't want Andrea in our lives. If she survives, I don't want her in our home. I'm going to help this little girl if I can. We'll see what happens after that. I hope you can try to understand, I said. Trina stormed off, and I took the children back home. She barely spoke to me afterward, and I knew our situation was going to be challenging. The next day, I was tested and had to wait for results. I entered the room where Andrea was with Mel. Andrea was beautiful and resembled her mother. At 10 years old, she was small due to her illness. Mel looked relieved to see me. "Thank you for coming," she said with a grateful smile. Andrea looked up at me. "Are you my guardian angel?" she asked. "Mom said you'd come to help me get what I need." "I'm not exactly an angel, but I'm here to help," I said with a reassuring smile. "We'll find out soon if I can." Andrea, though fragile, seemed very perceptive. "Do you have other children?" she asked. "Mom and I have secrets. When I get better, I'll share them with you." "Yes, I have 3 children at home who are younger than you. When you get better, I'll bring my kids to visit you." "I think you'd enjoy meeting them," I said. Andrea smiled weakly. "I'd like that. I don't have any siblings to play with, so it would be nice to have some new friends." Mel noticed Andrea's exhaustion. "Darling, close your eyes and rest. You need to gain your strength." "I'll keep Andy company," Mel said gently. Andrea's eyes closed as she drifted off. I looked at Mel, feeling a mix of concern and curiosity. How much does she really know about me? Mel smiled. "Andrea and I have secrets, just like she mentioned. She'll share them with you when she's better. For now, you'll have to guess." Mel walked me back to the lab, where we waited in the doctor's office. The doctor soon arrived and began speaking. "Mr. Connor, you are an excellent match for Andrea. While ideally, a child's liver would be a perfect match, we can use a part of your liver. It should offer her a good chance at recovery." "I'd like to think of her as my daughter now," I said. The doctor smiled. "That's a wonderful sentiment. Your daughter will have a chance at a full recovery. It might take a couple of months for her body to adjust to the new liver, but given her age, she should recover well." "And what about me?" I asked. "What will the recovery be like?" "You'll be under anesthesia while we remove part of your liver. When you wake up, you'll feel quite sore, as if you've been hit by a truck. Recovery will involve bed rest for about a month, and you won't be able to return to work for at least 6 weeks. Your body will gradually heal over the next year." "Are you serious?" I asked, taken aback. "Yes, that's the reality," the doctor said. "However, Andrea is very fortunate to have you willing to help her. Honestly, without this transplant, she might not have lasted another month. The downside is that we need to schedule the surgery as soon as possible. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I need to work tomorrow and take care of some paperwork. Can we start on Wednesday instead? I'll need all the necessary documents, especially since I'll be away for a while." "Wednesday is fine. My secretary will prepare everything you need. See you then, Mr. Connor." "Just call me Andy," I said. Mel took my arm as we returned to Andrea's room, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. "I don't know what to say, Andy. You're putting your life on hold for my daughter." "I'm doing this for my daughter too," I replied. "I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't help. As for you and me, Mel, I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm married and will never betray my wife. I've always had feelings for you, but we have our own lives now. No matter what happens, I want to remain your friend and have Andrea be a part of my life." I leaned over and kissed Andrea gently on the forehead. "Sleep tight, my beautiful daughter. Daddy loves you." Tears came to my eyes as I left the hospital. Afterward, I stopped by work to inform my boss about the situation. He was surprised but supportive, helping with the necessary paperwork and insurance. He assured me that my job would be waiting for me when I returned. When I got home, Trina was waiting for me. "So, is this your child?" "Yes, Andrea is my daughter. The operation is scheduled for Wednesday. I've arranged insurance and talked to my boss. I'll be out for at least 6 weeks, but I'll receive sick pay." "So, you're really going through with this?" Trina asked. "What about our children? Are you going to tell them about Andrea?" "Our kids are very young, 2, 4, and 6. I think they'll understand if I explain that I'm helping another child who needs it. I'll keep in touch with them and bring them to meet Andrea when she's better. Jen will help take care of them while I'm away. Trina's frustration was palpable. Sometimes Jen can be a bit of a nuisance, but she's like a second mother to our children. If you don't want her help, just let her know. Trina went to another room, leaving me to talk to the kids. I explained that they had an older sister from another mother who was very ill and needed help. The girls were upset but supportive. Save her, Dad. If you can help, you should, Renee said. I'll be away for a few days, but I'll call you every day until I return. When Andrea is better, I'll bring you to see her. Be good for Mom and Jen while I'm gone. On Wednesday, I went to the hospital to visit Andrea before the surgery. She was nervous but smiled when she saw me. Hi, Andy. I'm glad you came. I can't cope without you. I think she had a little bit of my personality. She was a sweet and caring girl. I only knew her for a few days, but I was already proud of her. I turned around, and Mel was standing there, all nervous. Everything will be fine, Mel. Andrea is ready, and so am I. She leaned over and gave me a kiss. Thank you, Andy. I will never forget what you did for our daughter. I looked at Andrea and saw that she had heard what her mother just said. She just smiled at me, as if to say, thank you, Dad. I went to my room and prepared for the operation. When I woke up after surgery, I remembered what the doctor said about how I would feel. He didn't lie, I felt terrible. The nurse came in and smiled at me as she ran her little tests. I told her how I was feeling, and she increased the painkiller. I looked around the room, but there was no one. I knew that Mel would be with her daughter, but I hoped that Trina would change her mind and come to me. I was sleeping, and when I woke up, I heard voices. My sister Jen and Mel were talking. Hello, little brother. How do you feel? You look terrible, Jen said with a laugh. We always made fun of each other. She was as good a sister as you could imagine. She was married but had no children. I don't know why, we just didn't talk about it. Jen, don't make me laugh, it hurts like hell. How did everything go? Will Andrea be okay? Mel replied, it's too early to say anything, but the doctor is very optimistic. He said the surgery went well, and now we need to pray that her body will accept the liver. I don't give away my organs to just anyone, I joked, which made me laugh, though it hurt. Andy, I will forever be grateful to you for what you did. You saved my daughter's life. To our daughter. She's still my daughter, even if we're not married. I want to see her regularly. My kids can't wait to meet her big sister. What about Trina? You know, I tried to talk to her several times over the years, but she always walked away. I just wanted to be friends, but she said no. I hope Andrea can be close to your other children. Trina never told me she talked to you ever. As for Andrea, I will bring my children to her. In fact, they told me they couldn't wait to see her and also told me to make her healthy. I promised them I would do my best. The three of us talked for a while, and then the doctor came in to see me. Jen and Mel said they would see me later. I spoke with the doctor, who updated me on my and Andrea's health status. Even though I felt terrible, I called home to talk to the kids. Trina answered the phone and asked how I was feeling. Okay, I think. I just called to say hi to the kids. I really didn't want to talk much right now, especially with Trina. Well, I'll probably come see you after work tomorrow. Today was too busy to leave, Trina said. She handed the phone to the children, and they all spoke at the same time on different phones. I told them that I would talk to them the next day, but just wanted to let them know that I was okay and that I missed them. How's the girl, Dad? Is she feeling better? Renee asked. As far as I know, she is getting better. I need to rest now, girls. Give Andy a kiss for me, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you all very much and miss you. We love you too, Dad. Bye. The next day, Trina actually came to see me. She asked how I was and how Andrea was. She didn't really seem bothered, it was more like she was asking because she felt she had to. She spent most of her time telling me about a special meeting she might have to attend in Chicago, which was supposed to be in a month or so I'd be out of the hospital and able to look after the kids. She said my sister Jen was with our kids now so she could come and visit me. Her visit left me wondering if she wanted to stay married to me. I had no specific reason to think so, but I had a feeling that she was hiding something. It wasn't a sixth sense, just a feeling. She kissed me lightly on the lips and said she would be back in a few days, then got up and left. A little later, Mel arrived, and the atmosphere in the room changed. I realized that I had married the wrong woman, but it was too late. I had made my choice and now had to do everything possible to save my marriage for the sake of my children. I called my kids every night and talked to them as I promised. It was so nice to hear them argue about who would talk to me. Even little Andy got his turn on the phone, his first words being, "Dad." The next few days passed without much of an event. Trina did come, and so did my sister Jen. Of course, Mel came all the time. She almost lived in the hospital, torn between Andrea and me. I knew that when I left the hospital, I would miss her, but I had to try to make my marriage happy. A few more days passed, and I received several visits from work colleagues. My mother also came to visit me. She said she was there when I was taken out of intensive care, but I was unconscious. My mom has been here every day since the surgery. She never talked much about it, just visited Andrea and said I did the right thing. I knew from the look on her face that she had accepted Andrea as her granddaughter. It was evident in the way grandmothers talk about their grandchildren. I asked Mel about Erica and her upcoming divorce. He's moving to California. You know, he was always kind of a nerd, but a good nerd. He is a wonderful person, and I will miss him. We agreed to remain friends. He's interested in computers and found a job in Silicon Valley. He will be a good husband for the right woman someday, but that woman is just not me. What do you do for a living, Mel? How do you plan to manage? Well, Eric is a computer genius. He set up my computer. I have a home business and do billing for several medical institutions. I choose my own hours of work, and the main thing is to complete the work on time. Eric and I made an agreement where he leaves me the house and furniture. Of course, I will pay the mortgage. We have our own cars, so there are no problems there. We divided our savings after paying off our credit cards. Alimony is not provided. It would be wrong for him to pay for a child that is not as if we are not married. Tears welled up in her eyes out of respect for Eric. Later in the evening, Eric visited me. I was completely stunned and didn't know what to say. I hoped he didn't want to fight because he definitely would have won. "Andy, I just came by to say thank you. You saved Andrea's life. You'll see that she is the sweetest girl, and I will miss her. Tomorrow I'm leaving for California. I just talked to the doctors, and Andrea's body seems to have accepted your liver. She's starting to return to her normal color. Eric, maybe you and Mel can work things out. Let's not deceive each other. If she loved me the way she loves you, I would have happily stayed with her. I played a supporting role for almost 10 years, hoping that she would forget you, but she never forgot and probably never will. We had a good marriage, but I want my wife to love me, not just respect me. Do you understand? We don't fight and do a lot of things together, but her heart belongs to you. I can't live like this anymore, especially since everyone now knows that Andrea is not my child by blood. So take care of my family. Don't worry about me. Computers are my first love, and I will be in Silicon Valley. Thank you again for giving Andrea a chance to live. You are a really good person. Eric, I'm so sorry. I really don't know what to say. What about Andrea? I know she will miss you. You're the only father she's ever known. I have to tell you that my relationship with Mel was based on respect. We decided from the beginning that my name would not appear on the birth certificate in the father column. She indicated your name and said that you were abroad, so your signature was not required. I know Mel and Andrea have their own secrets. My guess is that she knows about you and Mel. I'm sure she'll miss me as much as I miss her. That's why she needs you in her life. She needs a father figure. Why shouldn't it be her real father? Thanks again and take care of them. They both need you. Before I could say anything, Eric turned and left the room. I lay there and thought about how difficult my life had become. At home, I had a wife in a SOSO marriage with 3 wonderful children. On the other hand, I had an ex-girlfriend and a daughter to whom I just donated part of my liver. Not a good situation. I thought it wouldn't be long before I could return home. I was not allowed to lift anything heavier than 5 pounds. My girls understood this, but Andy knew nothing and wanted to be held. At the very least, he agreed to crawl in next to me and sit on the bed or sofa. My girls were like 2 little mothers taking care of me. Trina went to work every day, and when she came home, we were friendly to each other. Jen stopped by every day for a couple of hours to see if I needed anything. She was a huge help to me. I also talked to my mom daily to keep her updated on my condition. She took my 3 children every couple of days so I could rest. I was recovering well, but I didn't want to overexert myself. The first week I was home, I didn't call Mel directly. Jen would stop by the hospital or call Mel to see how Andrea was doing. She had to spend another week in the hospital. The doctor was surprised at how well she felt. Her complexion returned to normal and she was gaining weight. He was extremely optimistic about her condition. After Andrea was sent home to recover, my girls wanted to meet her. I still couldn't drive, so we all got in the van, and Jen drove us to Mel's house. I wasn't sure if I should go there, but with Jen and the kids, I thought it wouldn't be a problem. Mel's house was beautiful, well-furnished, and clean. I told the children that Andrea was sick, so they should be quiet. Mel smiled when she saw my children. She introduced herself and said they could call her Mel. She took the 2 girls to Andrea's room and introduced them to a smiling Andrea. I was surprised when I saw her. She was no longer jaundiced due to liver problems but had a beautiful, clear complexion. "Hi Andrea," said one of my daughters. "I'm your older sister." Well, older in age, at least she smiled seeing that Renee was almost as tall as her. "Don't I have a little brother?" "Where is he?" Andrea asked. Jen came into the room holding little Andy in her arms. "Were you looking for him?" Jen answered. I couldn't believe what Andrea said. I knew I would never forget this. Children sometimes say amazing things. "Hello, my sweet brother from another mom. I'm your big sister Andrea." He smiled, and Jen sat him down on the bed where he climbed in and sat next to his new big sister. I had tears in my eyes and couldn't help it, but I wasn't alone. When I looked, I saw Mel and Jen smiling too. Now I knew that Andrea had been told that I was her biological father. We spent a couple of hours together, allowing the kids to enjoy their time with each other. The kids were sad when we told them it was time to leave and that Andrea needed to rest. The girls said they wouldn't leave unless I promised they could come again. Of course, I told them they would see each other often. When I left, I knew that tonight, when I told Trina we were at Mel's, there would be a scene. Trina had just walked through the door when the girls told her that they met their big sister today. At least Trina had the good sense not to start yelling at me until the kids were in bed. They called me all sorts of names. I tried to explain that nothing inappropriate had happened and that Jen was there with me. Of course, Trina accused me of Jen lying for me and covering up the affair. "Oh my God, Trina, why can't you believe that we can just be friends? I have never cheated on you, and I never will. My family is too important to me to just go and have an affair. You accuse me of lying to you? Trust me, Jen would never cover up cheating, even from her brother. I told you the kids wanted to see each other, and they all had a good time. Why are you looking at everything so darkly? Everyone cheats on their spouses. I promise I won't cheat on you." She screamed a little more, and we went to bed. We still slept together, and I tried to cuddle up to Trina, but she wouldn't let me. Over time, I recovered well. The doctor told me to wait another month before returning to work. I called the factory and informed them. Trina reminded me of her trip to Chicago a couple of weeks later. She was going to be gone for the whole week. I thought there would be no problem with childcare now. I could lift Andy, so he was happy. The following week, our friends Bob and Maria came over to watch a movie and play cards. The girls chose the film same time, next year. This brings us to the current point in the story. As I mentioned at the beginning, something happened between Maria and Mel. I kept thinking about the look they exchanged with each other. I saw Trina whispering something to Maria before she and Bob left. I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't sure what. Things haven't been going well for us since my surgery. We haven't been intimate for a while. I thought I'd try again when we got into bed. I put my hand on her lower abdomen. At first, she pushed my hand away, but I kept trying. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "You're going away for a week, and I don't want to wait for you to come back." "Part of me is ready," I replied. We were intimate, and the next morning she left for work. I cleaned up the house, something I didn't often do. On her dresser, I noticed a package of birth control pills. When did she start taking them? I had a vasectomy over a year ago. I took them out and put them on the dresser. I opened them to see if she was taking them regularly. I knew I would ask her about it tonight. I hoped she had a good reason to use birth control. Our marriage was already on the rocks. I looked around for anything else that might be a concern but found nothing. Neither of us used the computer much at home, and we had the same email address, so there was nothing unusual there. I checked some of our phone bills, but they looked fine. Perhaps I was becoming paranoid. When Trina came home that evening, I told her about the birth control pills. "Why were you rummaging through my drawers?" "You had no right." "Is it true?" "I live here just like you." I wasn't spying. After the great night we had, I was helping clean up the house and was just putting your clothes away when I noticed the pills. "Are you going to explain why you're taking them, knowing that I had a vasectomy? You say you trust me, and then you give me the third degree." "I'll tell you why I take the pills. A few months ago, I was having problems with my period and went to the doctor. She suggested I take pills to help regulate my cycle. Why didn't you tell me you had issues? They would have prescribed me pills or advised me to see a doctor, as I did. Besides, you were too worried about your other family at the time. I didn't want to bother you with my medical problem. This is inappropriate, Trina. You are my wife, and you mean a lot to me. I'm sorry I doubted you, but I got worried when I saw the pills. I was afraid. I was afraid that you might have an affair. I'm really sorry. Okay, now you know why I take the pills. It's not because I want them, but because my doctor prescribed them. I felt better after talking to her. I admit I still had my doubts, but I wanted to believe her. On Thursday evening, we were intimate again. It was almost an instant repeat of that day. On Friday morning, she was in a great mood. She kissed me and the kids goodbye before leaving for Chicago. I told her to hurry back so we could pick up where we left off. On Saturday, I took the kids to see Mel and Andrea. We spent the day together like one big happy family. I wished my life could be like that with Trina instead of constantly fighting. There were feelings between Mel and me, but we both knew better than to act on them. On Sunday, while watching TV with the children, there was a knock on the door. I answered and saw two old school friends, April and Mandy, who graduated from high school with Trina and me. They were gathering information for our next high school reunion. They had our address from Melissa, though I had forgotten she mentioned this. I invited the women in and poured some tea. We started with the usual questions about how we were doing and what was new. April spoke first. "So Andy, tell me what's new in your life and where you're working for our book." I shared a few facts about joining the service and my current job, not mentioning the surgery. Then they asked about Trina. I told them about the travel agency she worked for. Mandy looked surprised. "Oh my God, this is so weird." "What's weird about working at a travel agency?" I asked. "It's just that her old boyfriend, Zach Carter, works at the same agency, but in Chicago. It's strange that both old friends are in the same company but different states." "How do you know that, Mandy?" "We spoke to his mother last week. She told us all about him, how rich and powerful he is. I remember in high school, all the girls wanted to date him. His mother says he is still in great shape and exercises every day. Can I get a copy of his profile? I think Trina would like to contact him." I was more interested in the information for myself. I began to suspect that Trina knew everything about Zach. "Andy, I have an extra copy of his profile, but you might have a hard time finding him. According to Zach's mother, his wife is an Illinois state senator. You might need to get tested just to see them. Mandy laughed, and I laughed with them, but inside I was burning. After receiving Zach's profile, I said goodbye to my old classmates. I thought I'd call Bob to see if he knew anything about Zach. I decided against involving Maria and called Trina's room in Chicago instead. The phone rang 5 times before Trina answered. She seemed to be breathing a little heavily. "Hello," she said. "Hello, dear wife. How are you this fine morning? Why are you calling me, Andy? We said you should only call if it's an emergency. Are the children okay?" "The kids are fine, but their father is a little upset." "Why did you call, Andy?" "I don't have time for your games today. It's Sunday. You don't have meetings on Sundays, do you?" "Oh, I forgot. You're having one of your secret meetings with Zach. Did I interrupt?" "Enough, Andy. I've heard enough of your nonsense. We'll talk about it when I get home next week." I can hear him in the background. "Of course, you can't have a conversation and keep it quiet. I'm going to hang up now. We'll talk about this when I get home. Or I'll come to Chicago and deal with Zach myself." I heard Zach whispering to Trina in the background. It was clear they couldn't hide it anymore. "Zach, get your hands off me," Trina said. "He knows you're here. We can't hide it anymore. He'll call your wife if I don't talk to him now." "How long have you been dating him?" "Since you don't want to answer me, I think it's been about 7 years. No wonder you come home wanting to be intimate. You couldn't get it out of your system. Or did you want to have a child with him and cover it up by having me?" "Please, Andy. I can't think right now. Let's talk later. Whose children am I raising? Mine or your lover's? Tell me." "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know." "Wow, honesty isn't one of your qualities. Maybe I'll have to sue my lover for 6 years of maintenance. I'm sure the senator will want to support my children." "Please don't say that. How am I supposed to talk to you? I've been as honest as I could. I promised never to cheat on you, and I haven't, though you've accused me of that. On the other hand, you've been involved with Zach behind my back for at least 7 years. How else am I supposed to react? Andy, I don't know what to say right now. We'll talk when I get home. The only thing we'll do when you get home is start the divorce proceedings and have the kids tested. Until then, enjoy your time with him. Just so you know, if the tests show that the children are mine, I will take them from you." "No, you can't take my kids." I hung up. I needed more information. I called Bob, who had just returned from fishing. "Bob, this is Andy. I lost Trina's room number and thought you might have Maria's number." He gave me the number and asked if there was a problem. "No, it's okay. I just wanted to ask her something." "Thanks, Bob." I called Maria's number, and she answered. "Hello, Maria. This is Andy." "Andy, Trina isn't here right now. I can ask her to call you back." Enough of this. "Maria, I know where she is, who she's with, and what she's doing. I know she's with Zach Carter in room 8004. Answer a few questions, or I'll ask Bob. Are you trying to blackmail me?" "Blackmail? No, I just need the truth. If Trina's been unfaithful for 7 years and you covered it up, then you need to tell me everything, or I'll inform Bob about this." "What do you want to know, Andy?" "So, did you also have an old boyfriend?" "Please don't tell Bob. I did have a relationship with someone before, and I felt so guilty that I stopped sharing a room with Trina. It was a mistake, and I'm truly sorry." "Who was it, Maria?" "Please, Andy, it was a friend of Zach's. I want to move on and forget about it. Don't tell Bob. Tell me everything you know about Trina and Zach, and I promise not to tell Bob about this conversation." Trina found out Zach worked for the same agency and started seeing him again during seminars. She said she always loved him and made a mistake marrying you. They often stayed in their room and only went out for dinner. "What about the children?" "I don't know what to say. Trina hoped that the children were Zach's as a way of getting back at you. But as far as I know, she wasn't certain. Let's not lie, Maria. Trina and I will be getting a divorce, and I will have the children tested. I will keep my promise and not tell Bob about this conversation. As for other matters, I won't hide anything from him. I needed someone to talk to. I wanted to talk to Mel but wasn't sure it was wise. I didn't want to drag her into this mess. I called my sister Jen and asked her to come over. She sensed the urgency in my voice and said she would come right away. Jen and I discussed everything and considered different scenarios. I was very confused and didn't know what to do next. I understood why there might be temporary measures for such situations. I was ready to confront Zach and Trina if they walked through my door. Jen and I agreed it would be worth informing Zach's wife. I found Zach's profile, which had his home number. I called, and the secretary answered. "I'd like to speak to Mrs. S. Carter." "Who is this?" "This is Andrew Connor from Ohio." "Are you Mrs. G.Y. Carter?" "Yes, but I'm known as Senator Conroy. My husband's last name is Carter." "Well, Senator, your husband is involved with my wife at a hotel. I thought you should know." "Damn it, he said he wasn't seeing anyone else." "Is her name Trina?" "Yes, Trina Connors from Ohio. She will soon be my ex-wife." "Mr. Connors, thank you for letting me know. I can't talk now, but my staff will contact you. I'd prefer to speak with you personally, not through your staff. I just wanted you to know about your husband's actions." I hung up, realizing she knew about her husband's infidelity. I wondered if Trina was his only mistress. Now, all that was left was to wait for Trina to return and start the divorce proceedings. The most challenging part would be determining if the children were biologically mine. What if they weren't? I had raised each of them from day one. They were my family and my life. Around midnight, there was a knock on the door. I sat on the couch, contemplating my problems. I had tucked the children in, hugged and kissed each of them, and wondered if they were truly mine. I desperately wanted a drink, but after my liver surgery, I couldn't have alcohol for at least a year. The knock came again, and I went to answer it. A policeman stood at the door. "I'm Officer Bates with the Sheriff's Department." "Are you Andrew Connor, Trina Connor's husband?" "Yes, officer, that's me." "What happened?" "I'm sorry to report that your wife was killed in a car accident in rural Illinois. I was asked to inform you." I was shocked. Just a moment ago, I was filled with anger towards her, and now she was dead. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to wake up from what felt like a nightmare, but it was real. "What happened, officer?" "Are you sure it's her? Maybe it's a mistake?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Connor. There is no mistake. It was a car accident, and both individuals in the vehicle were killed. The car went off the road, overturned, and crashed into a tree." "You said both. Was Maria the second person in the car?" "No, sir. It was Zach Carter." I was stunned. I had thought it might have been Trina and Maria returning early, but that wasn't the case. This meant Trina had spent time with Zach even after our conversation. Yes, I knew Zach. He worked in the company's Chicago office. I haven't seen him for many years. "What time did the accident happen?" "About 7 o'clock in the evening, give or take a few minutes. It took us some time to gather information and contact you." "Again, Mr. Connor, I'm sorry to bring you this news. If you contact the Chicago Sheriff's Department tomorrow, they can provide you with more details." "Good night, sir." "Thank you, officer," I said, closing the door. I was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions: hatred, loss, love, disgust, and even fear of what to do next. I had 3 small children to care for and had to find a way to tell them about their mother's death. I couldn't sleep and didn't want to call anyone at that hour. I knew tomorrow would be one of the hardest days of my life. I must have dozed off in the chair and was awakened by a call at 7 in the morning. The display read "personal call." I answered. "Mr. Andrew Connors," said a voice. "Yes, it's me." "Who is calling?" "Just a moment, sir," came the reply. Then a woman's voice took over. "Mr. Connor, this is Senator Conroy. Under the circumstances, I'd prefer to be addressed by my first name, Janice." I know you've been informed of the accident, and I'm very sorry for your loss. I need to ask a favor. Mrs. Conroy, you also lost your husband. I understand this is a difficult time for both of us. What do you need? Could you avoid mentioning the affair between my husband and your wife? I know it's a lot to ask, but it would have a severe impact on my political career. I can't change the past, but I hope to manage the situation quietly. You may receive calls from reporters. I can handle my end, but I'd appreciate it if you could keep the affair from becoming public. I will keep the affair private if you agree to 2 things. Provide me with a detailed report on the accident, one that might be hidden by high-ranking officials, and a sample of Zach's DNA. I need to know the truth. I understand. I will get you what you need after the funeral. I hope you keep your promise and don't disclose the affair. I always keep my promises, Janice. All right, I'll arrange for the reports to be sent to you as soon as possible. Thank you. I hung up and made myself some coffee. I knew it was early, but I called Jen and told her about the accident. She was surprised but agreed to come right away. I also informed my parents, who always woke up early. The next difficult task was to inform Trina's parents. Her father answered, and I conveyed the sad news, explaining that Trina and Zach were going out to dinner when the accident occurred. They asked me to keep them updated, and I agreed. My children woke up, and I made them breakfast. When Jen arrived, we gathered in the living room to tell the children. Kids, you need to be very brave. Mom has died and won't be coming home. Tears welled up in their eyes as they started crying. Little Andy saw his sisters crying and started crying too. It was the hardest thing to see my children upset. I hugged each of them and let them cry, trying to be strong, but I cried as well. I held the girls while Jen comforted Andy. We tried to answer all their questions. There was a knock on the door, and Jen called out, "Come in." It was Mel, who came in looking concerned. "I'm so sorry to hear what happened," Mel said, tears in her eyes. Ashley ran to Mel and sat on her lap as Mel began to gently comfort her. Andrea sat down next to her mother. "How did you know?" I asked Mel. "Jen called me after you did." "I hope you don't mind," Mel said. "Of course not. I was just surprised." After the children had calmed down a bit, Andrea offered to take them to their rooms and play games with them, which was a relief because the phone started ringing immediately afterward. Journalists and reporters kept calling, asking the same questions. I would get frustrated and hang up. Jen decided to handle the calls. She answered the next call, saying, "I don't understand why you journalists keep bothering us. My brother just lost his wife, and he has 3 small children. We are not celebrities, we need privacy. The fact that Zach Carter was married to a politician in another state is irrelevant. If it's so important, why not contact her instead?" We turned on the news, which reported that a local woman had died in Chicago last night. She was with Zach Carter, the husband of State Senator Janice Conroy. Senator Conroy expressed her condolences and said the woman, Trina Connor from Ohio, was a colleague of Zach Carter. They were returning from dinner when the accident occurred. "I see now why we're getting so many calls," I said. "I think we should prepare a statement for the reporters and stick to it until they leave us alone." I answered the next call. "Hello, this is Andrew Connor. I'll tell you what I know. Zach Carter and my wife, Trina, worked for the same travel agency, but in different states. They occasionally met to discuss travel opportunities. They went to dinner and were returning to her hotel when the accident happened. I talked to my wife that morning and knew they were friends from school. It was a terrible accident, and we will miss her. For further inquiries, please contact Senator Conroy." I hung up, and Jen and I took turns answering calls, which were becoming increasingly repetitive. Mel, noticing the tension, joked, "You're a brave man, trying to give your late wife's clothes to your ex-girlfriend." "They were beautiful," I said, trying to explain. "I just wanted to be generous." Jen suggested, "Let's have a garage sale and sell the clothes. They should bring in some good money." Just then, the phone rang, and I heard a familiar voice. After hanging up, I asked the women to take the children to the park or somewhere for a couple of hours, as someone important was coming over to talk with me privately. I promised to explain everything later. When they left, there was a knock on the door. Senator Janice Conroy and her driver stood outside. I invited them in. Senator Conroy, who was a strikingly attractive woman in her 50s, handed me an envelope. I was in Columbus on state business and decided to make this short trip to provide you with the information you requested, she said. The envelope contained an unofficial accident report and Zach's DNA profile. Would you like a cup of coffee, Mrs. Conroy? I asked. Please, just call me Janice. A cup of coffee with a little cream would be nice. Thank you for keeping the affair private. It wouldn't help anyone if the truth were known, she said. I received a call from the insurance company. They want to discuss a possible settlement. Janice, I don't need your money. I just want this to end so my family and I can move on with our lives. Andy, dozens of lawyers will offer you settlements, promising millions if you contact them. The case could drag on for years. The insurance company wants to settle quickly, and so do I. They've made you an offer that, if accepted, will close the case and ensure no one bothers you anymore. What kind of proposal is this? I asked. Is this your money? No, it's the insurance company's money, Janice explained. They're offering $100,000 for each of your children to be put into trust accounts. Payments will be available once they turn 18, and you'll be the custodian of those accounts. They'll only be able to access the funds with your permission until they turn 25. After that, they'll manage the accounts on their own. Why are they offering this money? Was there some sort of violation? No, it's just that there are so many lawsuits these days. Filing a lawsuit is often seen as easier than dealing with the situation directly. This offer is meant to close the case. They'll also cover all medical expenses related to the accident, hospital bills, ambulances, and any other costs. So, in total, it's $300,000 plus medical expenses. I have 4 children, not 3. My other daughter lives with her mother. If I accept this offer, she should also get a share. I'm sorry, I didn't know about your other daughter. I'll make sure you receive enough for all 4 children. If we're done, Janice, this might be the last time I see you. Can you tell me about you and Zach, and why you allowed this situation to continue after you found out? Yes, you deserve to know, Janice said. I met Zach when he was in college. He was quite rough around the edges. I was asked to teach political science, and we became friends. Despite the age difference, I'm 25 years older than Zach. At first, it was exciting to be with someone younger. I guess you could say Zach was my companion at social events. Initially, he enjoyed the attention, but as he realized it was more about me than him, he started to struggle. I bought him a travel agency to run, but he still had trouble staying faithful. Why didn't he divorce you and go his own way? He had no means of his own. I provided for him, and he got used to the lifestyle. He had nothing to his name, not even the car he crashed. If he left me, he would have lost everything. He met your wife at a conference about 7 years ago. I found out about their relationship and gave him an ultimatum: either end the affair or face consequences. He seemed to stop or at least hide it better, until I heard from you. What will the report say? I feel like something was left out. The unofficial report states that Zach had been injured at the time of the accident. Your wife was not in a state of dress when the accident occurred. I covered this up and wanted it to stay that way. Witnesses reported that a black SUV may have caused Zach's vehicle to spin and lose control. The official report says the witness was too far behind to be certain about the SUV's involvement. Are you involved in their deaths? No, I'm not. There are others involved in this, and I don't want to know more. I had my own feelings for Zach, and he was a significant part of my life. Thank you for providing the information, I said. I still have questions, but I'll leave them for another time. Janice left, and I opened the envelope. The report confirmed many of the details she'd shared. I now understood the full context of my wife's relationship with Zach. When everyone returned, I explained to the girls who my visitor had been and what had transpired. They were surprised to learn about Janice Conroy's involvement. I shared our agreement and that the senator had fulfilled her part. Mel expressed concern for me, saying, even though you're dealing with a lot, you need support. It's important to talk about these things with someone. The girls were upset after reading the report. They hoped that Trina might have felt remorse. After talking to me that morning, I shared some of the things Janice Conroy had revealed. My sister Jen said, "I know it's terrible to say, but maybe Trina's death was a blessing." How much worse could it have gotten if this had continued, especially with the children involved? I knew she was right, only she said it out loud. That was Jen for you. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind. After she left, I sat at the table, reading the report again and looking at Zach's DNA report. Mel sat down next to me. "What are you going to do about it?" she asked, pointing to Zach's DNA report. "I have an appointment at the clinic tomorrow to check on the kids and see if Zach is their biological father." "Don't do this, Andy. For your sake and for the sake of your children, don't do this." "I need to know, Mel. I need to know why. Why is it so important now? Zach is dead, Trina is dead, and nothing good can come from this. What if you're not the biological father? What then? Will you give up your children? Send them to an orphanage? Will you raise them with resentment in your heart? Please, Andy, think about it. You are their father. You've been with them from their first days, attended their births, changed their diapers. Most importantly, you've always been there for them. They call you Daddy. No one else. Don't plant these thoughts in their heads and hearts. Please, promise me you'll think about it." "Okay, I'll think about it tonight. If we go, I'll come see you tomorrow after we finish." Mel kissed me lightly on the lips. It was a gentle gesture, and she called Andrea, then they went home. I kept my promise and gave the situation serious thought. It was already close to lunch the next day when I pulled up to Mel's house. The children jumped out and ran toward her. Andrea was at school, but Mel told them they could play in her room. Renee was supposed to be at school but had already been let out a day early. "You did it, didn't you?" Mel asked. "Sorry, but I promised the children," I replied. "What did you do this for?" "I promised the kids I'd take them to McDonald's for lunch." "I'm keeping my promises," I said with a smile. "So, you didn't go through with it?" "No, I thought about what you said. They are my children, and always will be. I wanted to keep it that way." "So what now?" Mel asked, sitting on my lap. "This is the closest we've been since the funeral, other than the occasional kiss," I said. It felt nice to be close to her. "You're a wonderful woman. We mourn for a while, then we start dating, and then you ask me to marry you. I say yes, and we live happily ever after, just like in a storybook." She had the most beautiful smile on her face. I smiled too. "What if I don't want to marry you?" "What then?" Mel asked. "Then I'll just live with you. I already lost you once, it won't happen again. Besides, I heard the children talking. They like me, you know, and I love them. What about intimacy? Are you all right with that?" Mel asked. I started laughing. "Darling, with you, it will be more than just intimacy. It will be love, and it will be great." Mel laughed too. Just then, Andrea came home from school and saw Mel sitting on my lap. She started smiling and called out to the other children, "Renee, Ashley, Andy, come here quickly. There's something you need to see." The kids arrived, with Andy being the last. They smiled at Mel, and Ashley spoke first. "Does this mean you'll be our mother after our mother died?" Mel got off my lap, tears in her eyes, walked over, knelt in front of Ashley, and hugged her. "Darling, I will gladly be your mother. Your other mother will always be in your hearts, and I will be here to take care of you." Andy wanted a hug too, so he walked over, and Mel hugged him as well. Renee came up to me and asked, "Dad, when will you get married and where will we live?" "Well, honey, first I want to make sure you kids want us to get married." "Of course, Daddy." What a silly question. We already love Mel. We just want to know where we're going to live. Well, I haven't even asked Mel to marry me yet. Well, do it, Daddy. Do it right now, the kids exclaimed. Even little Andy joined in. I laughed, and Mel almost cried. I walked over to her, took her hand as she stood up, knelt down in front of her, and said, "Mel, the kids and I love you. Will you be their mother and my wife? I need to buy you a ring to make this official. I didn't plan this for today, but I can't think of a better time with better witnesses." Before I could finish, the children began to shout, "Answer him, Mommy! Answer him!" It was funny how, even before she answered, the children started calling her Mom. Mel looked at me and said, "I've thought about this for a while. Yes, I will marry you, Andrew Connors." The kids jumped up and down, cheering, "Kiss her, Daddy. Kiss her and make it official." I did just that, and it felt wonderful. The kids knew that it would be a while before we got married. We had many things to plan. "But we'll see each other almost every day," Mel replied. She didn't want to explain to the children about waiting after a loss. She told them they could call her mom if they wanted. After the kids returned to Andrea's room to play, I looked at Mel, smiling. Everything seemed to be going well. She laughed. "If we're going to date, are we going to have a special evening together? If so, could we start with that on our first date?" "For you, my love, anytime," she said with a smile. "We don't even need to plan a special date." With that, she went to the phone and called my sister Jen. "What's going on?" I asked. "Jen is coming over to take the kids to the movies. They wanted to see the children's movie Happy Feet, and Jen agreed to take them," Mel explained. "Darling, I have a question for you. Will you and I stay here and take care of what we discussed earlier?" Before I could respond, Mel called the children back into the room. "Aunt Jan and Uncle Ralph are coming to take you all to Happy Feet. Dad and I have some things to do, but we'll be here when you get back. Be good to Aunt Jen and Uncle Ralph, okay?" "Yes, Mom, we can hear you," Andrea replied with a smile. Jen and Ralph arrived a few minutes later. Ashley ran up to them as soon as they walked through the door. "Mom and Dad are getting married, and you can come to the wedding, but we don't know when it will be yet." Jen looked at us, a bit surprised. "Well, congratulations. We better head out to the movies with the kids so you can finish up here. We'll stop and get some pizza on the way home, so you'll have about 3 hours. I hope you can finish up by then." "Why are you laughing, Uncle Ralph?" Ashley asked. "I was just thinking about the dancing penguin. It should be a good film," Ralph replied with a chuckle. After they left, I played dumb and asked Mel, "What unfinished business do we need to handle?" Mel pulled me into her bedroom. "I've waited over 11 years to hold you again. Please, let's cherish this time together, but remember we have a 3-hour window." We both laughed as we embraced, and then began to prepare for our future together. We enjoyed the Christmas holidays, spending a lot of time together as a family, even though we weren't married yet and still lived in our own houses. The children wanted us to get married as soon as possible. After the holidays, they gathered and asked if they could have a big birthday party combined with our wedding. Angie, as we started calling her, explained that they chose the name Angie for Andrea because they already had Andy, their little brother. They wanted to celebrate Valentine's Day and have a combined birthday wedding event. "What do you think?" Angie asked. The kids thought it would be a great idea. Mel and I couldn't stop laughing at how the kids had come together to make plans for us. We were unsure how to address it without disappointing them. "Angie, I know you and the others have been thinking a lot about this party. I think we should see what your mom has to say," I said. Mel looked at me and then back at the children's hopeful faces. She knew I had passed the decision to her. "I'm a little surprised by your proposal, kids," Mel began. "Hosting a big birthday party is one thing, but combining it with our wedding and asking for gifts might not be the best idea. We've always taught you to think of others first. I'm a bit disappointed that you're using our wedding as a way to get gifts." The children lowered their heads, seeming to understand Mel's point. Renee asked, "Mom, if we give up on the gifts, can we still have the party and you and Dad get married?" Mel looked at me for support. I tried to keep a serious expression on my face. "Kids, since your dad is leaving this decision to me, I will agree to the birthday party. And we'll make the wedding a family event, but we won't ask guests to bring gifts for you." I was completely surprised by Mel's willingness to turn the event into a family occasion. The children cheered with joy, hugging Mel and then me. We had a month and a half to organize everything. I returned to work, and most of the planning fell on Mel's shoulders, though Jen was there to help her. They became best friends, closer than most sisters. The girls rented a hall at the church, and since Mel was a member, it was easy for her to secure the hall and the pastor for the weekends surrounding Valentine's Day. Our color scheme was red and white with lots of hearts. The women from the church offered to cook dinner, but we insisted on paying for all the food and the cake. It was a small wedding. Jen was the maid of honor, and her husband Ralph was my best man. We had 2 young assistants, a flower girl and a ring bearer. Guess who they were? I was in a nice suit, and Mel looked angelic in a blue dress. When the music started, tears filled my eyes. My son walked first, carrying a cushion with a ring, followed by my daughter Andrea, also in blue. Renee walked behind her, wearing a blue dress, and Ashley, as the flower girl, came next. When Mel was led down the aisle by her father, I could see she was just as emotional as I was. Despite my nervousness, it felt right to marry the love of my life after years of a turbulent relationship with my first wife. When the priest said I could kiss the bride and the applause followed, I realized just how many old friends and family members had gathered. Until that moment, I had been completely focused on Mel. In the reception hall, a large banner read, "Congratulations to the Connors family on their recent marriage," while another banner said, "Happy birthday to Renee, Ashley, Andy, and Andrea, whose birthday isn't until March." The children were thrilled to see the banners, and there was a stack of birthday cards for each of them. We had mentioned in the invitations that the event would be a combined birthday and wedding celebration, making it a perfect Valentine's Day. For our honeymoon, we decided to wait until June, when the kids were on vacation, and took them all to Disneyland. We got adjoining rooms, with the kids sharing 2 double beds and us having a king-size bed. During the day, we enjoyed the park with the children, and at night, we enjoyed some private time together. The kids couldn't understand why we were so tired every morning. When we returned home, Jen shared the news that she was expecting her first child. We were thrilled for her and Ralph, knowing they had been trying for a long time. Now, Andy would have a little buddy to grow up with. We decided to sell my house and move into Mel's, which was larger and well-maintained. We auctioned off most of the furniture from my old house and made the transition smoothly. The children were excited to have new furniture for their rooms. The insurance checks arrived, and we set up separate accounts for the children's future needs. That was the last we heard about the accident. We also read that Senator Conroy was re-elected by a landslide, a testament to the sympathy he received. Life can throw many challenges our way, but sometimes, if you handle them well, you end up hitting a home run. It was the same for us. I never tested the kids with Zach's DNA information, though I kept it safely stored. Maybe, when I'm older, I'll have the courage to compare it. For now, when one of my children runs to hug me and calls me Dad, I know I made the right decision. What do you think of our story today? I think the husband had the right to take a DNA test, but I don't know if that was his ultimate goal, but fate had it differently. What do you think? Write in the comments. See you in the comments.